Between the two of them, the inside of Coates, Barker gets too heavily involved.
And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Hello everyone and welcome to the home of British motorsport. We are at Silverstone for the second event of the season in the Maximum Networks Goodyear Maximum Networks Touring Car Trophy, powered by VRRC. Good start that, wasn't it? Andy McEwen here with Jack Oliphant alongside me. The international circuit at Silverstone, the host venue for two races here this evening. And after a very dramatic opening round a week ago on the international circuit at Alton Park, we're expecting perhaps a slightly different style of racing here at Silverstone, but certainly the same close quarters action with lots of overtaking guaranteed. You can see there that it is a 6-round calendar. We're off to Brands Hatch in a week's time on the Grand Prix circuit, the high-speed Thruxton on the 10th of February, Donington Park's National Circuit on the 17th of Feb, and then the final round, as in the Real World Series, will be on the Snetterton 300 circuit. And based on what we saw a week ago, we are likely to have a championship decider that goes right down to the very wire. A fantastic start to the season, as I said a week ago, and a season that at the end of it will have some pretty tasty prizes on offer. The winner of both the gold and the silver class receiving a TCR UK test day, and that will be shared between the champions in both of those classes, and that could be a fantastic opportunity for whoever manages to wrap it up. Second prize, OBP Esports hydraulic pedals, whilst third prize will receive a Riggs SR5 simulator chassis. Fourth place in both classes will receive 2 VIP tickets to a TCR round this year. It's shaping up to be a fantastic season as well, so regardless of whether you win those tickets, you want to get yourself trackside to see a round of TCR UK this year. Whilst fifth place in both of the classes will receive 2 hours free simulator training at Silverstone. Jack Oliphant, as I said, here with me today, and Jack, Those prizes are fantastic, as too was the racing a week ago at Alton Park. Proper rough and tumble touring car racing, wasn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely was. It's probably what we come to expect from Alton Park racing, whatever car you're in, but it was, as you mentioned, proper touring car stuff. And the drivers that came away best from that is Jack Smith, of course. He is absolutely dominant, absolutely flew around the Cheshire circuit. He'll be hoping to do a similar thing around Silverstone, although I don't think it's going to be quite as easy looking at the practice times. Jack McIntyre was keeping him honest in second place, and Jordan Brennan was coming up the, not the back of the field, the back of the podium, shall we say, in third place. But spoiler alert, Brennan is looking mighty fine in the practice session at Silverstone. Driver of the round was also Jack McIntyre, who got himself a tasty AOC gaming keyboard. And if we have a look at the silver category, there we go. Kenny Press, with a fantastic race too, ended up obviously taking home most of the points. Paul Zanatachi in a very striking looking livery. He's always standing out as Paul. He came second with Dave Buki, new to the championship of VRRC. Came home in third, and I'm sure he'll be hoping to push on a little bit further forward this time. He's looking quick in practice, as we mentioned before. You said it, Andy, that it was a bit of a different... well, we're expecting a different race here at Silverstone. A bit wider, isn't it? A bit more flowing. There's probably going to be a bit more 2-wide, 3-wide action.
Yeah, there's just more space to do that here at Silverstone. It's also got a much higher average speed as well, so maybe a little bit of slipstreaming. These are not the most aerodynamic of cars, so that could well come into play, especially down the long hanger straight. After those first two races at Alton Park, then, this is how the championship looks. Jack Smith, who had a really consistent night of racing. Jack Smith won the first race and then came from the back of the reversed grid in race 2 to finish third, so he was the best point scorer. Arrives here at Silverstone 6 points clear of Jack McIntyre in second. Jordan Brennan is then a further 4 points back in third, with Isaac Smith fourth, ahead of Jack Keithley and Dave Newsham, who had good pace, but ultimately got involved in one or two too many incidents over the night. Further down, then, you can see in the silver category, it is an awful lot tighter, because Paul Zanatachi, who we thought, leaving Alton Park, would have had a much bigger lead than that, because he was definitely the top scorer over the night, but received a 40-second penalty in a post-race judicial, which saw him drop down the order in race 2, which means he arrives here joint championship leader in the silver class with Dave Buki, and they are both 1 point ahead of Kenny Press, who is 1 point ahead of Martin Johnson, who is 1 point ahead of Eric Bolton. So 3 points covering the top 5 in the silver class. And you said it, I think, last week, Jack, that you expected that to be the category that arguably could be the tightest. And so far, you bang on the money.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure why. There's probably some very clever maths behind it all, but it just seems that the silver category is always just that touch tighter than the gold. Normally in the gold, you have 2 or 3 drivers really gunning for that top step, and I think that's what we're going to be seeing here in the Touring Car Trophy. But in the silver category, it always tends to be about 6 cars in the running right up until the penultimate round at least. So all these drivers are going to have to focus on being consistent, finishing strong, and just making sure that they score as many points as possible. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But each and every race is completely different, as we mentioned before. I think we can go to a hot lap now of Dave Marshall, I believe, tearing the TCR car around the Silverstone circuit.
So out of the last corner here at Silverstone International for round 2 of the Maximum Networks Touring Car Trophy, powered by VRRC. Very, very fast first corner, Abbey. 5th gear, just rolling a little bit of speed off with maybe a little bit of brake. Some drivers will be brave enough there just to give it a slight lift though. Now into Village, a very tight corner. You want to get the braking done earlier than what you think, so you roll the speed in, 3rd gear, and then blend the throttle in. And then to Beckett's, yet again, nosing the car on that front left wheel, getting the balance point, and try not to run it too far wide. If you get a left wheel on that grass on the straight, it does slow you down quite significantly, and this is one of the key overtaking opportunities on the track, so getting the best speed out of here is going to be your best option. now down to Stowe, brake just at the start of that curve, trailing it into its apex, 4th gear, and make sure we don't pick up that throttle, and we know we don't have to get back off it. Now down towards the last chicane, there's a latency down the brakes, but trying to get the turn in just right so we clip that first apex, then it's a short shift into 3rd and flat out now all the way towards the line. Make sure you tune in on Thursday night from 7:15 on VRRC's YouTube, and also make sure you give this video a like and subscribe.
So the Silverstone International circuit there, Jack, is a completely different challenge from Alton Park a week ago, but a challenge nonetheless, because you are carrying that bit extra speed, but as you can see there, in particular on this international layout, there are 2 or 3 key braking points that you have to get right. And of course, the faster you're going, the harder it can be sometimes to get those braking points right, and that's key to a good lap time.
Exactly, and the international circuit is used slightly less than the national circuit as well, isn't it? So a lot of these drivers will have a lot of experience in the other half of Silverstone, and obviously on the full GP loop. But when you cut off half the track and you sort of using it's Abbey, isn't it? The first corner, and then all of a sudden you pretty much go through the complex of hairpins, and instead of going through the second hairpin, you sort of cut off 90 degrees, don't you? So it can be a little bit odd, but hopefully these drivers will adapt to it quickly. And as you mentioned, there are some key braking zones on a small track like this as well. Momentum is everything. If you lose out a couple of miles an hour down the straight, that could be 2/10. That could be the difference between first and like 7th place or 10th place or something like that. So it's going to be incredibly close. I'm looking forward to it. The practice times were astronomically close. So yeah, can't wait for this one. We're actually looking at Isaac Smith at the moment, new to the TCR grid this year, TCR UK obviously this year. So he's just signed up. He signed up this afternoon for this E-Series as well. And looking forward to seeing if he can carry on that momentum from Alton Park.
Yeah, now those who tuned in at Alton Park may remember that Isaac Smith was pretty quick. In fact, he did particularly well in race 2 because he won it, having unfortunately retired in race 1 with some connection issues. He was at the time deputising for Rob Butler, who couldn't make the opening round. So we did say at the time that he was scoring points on behalf of Rob. He was only going to be scoring half points as a stand-in driver, but he's now decided to enter the championship himself. So Smith now gets to keep the points that he scored last time at Alton Park, and Rob Butler, as you can see there, is back with us now this weekend. And Rob Butler, a very, very quick driver in front-wheel drive machinery. He was fastest at the end of the previous lap in this 15-minute qualifying session, which is nearly 5 minutes in, but he's dropped down to 4th place now. At the moment, Jack, Rob Butler would line up on the outside of row 2, but he's less than a 10th off pole position. This is ridiculously tight.
Yeah, but if we're having a look at the practice times as well, Jack McIntyre's current pole position time is about 2/10 off the ultimate pace that we saw from Jordan Brennan in practice. And there we go, Smith just inches away, chips away a little bit. That's Jack Smith, of course. This is going to get confusing a little bit. I was hoping that Isaac Smith, once he left last week, it would be a bit easier to notify the 2 Smiths. But it's Jack Smith currently on pole position by less than 1/10 of a second to McIntyre, which in itself is 0.03 of a second to Brennan. And again, I think those lap times are just going to come down ever so slightly. Once the drivers get the new tyres on, which will happen in probably the next 2 minutes or so, they'll get out there, the banker laps are done, they'll start pushing, and all of a sudden we're starting to see the real Hail Mary laps out there.
Yeah, because we did see that 1 lap time sub 1 minute 7 set by Jordan Brennan in practice, as you said. So we're not quite
stunning.
down there yet. Absolutely, that is a brilliant, brilliant lap time. He thinks that he can go quicker with fresh tyres because he is one of the first to bail for the pit lane. Rob Butler, who was chasing him around the track, getting a nice slipstream as he did, is going to try and complete this lap time if he can to go to the top. Can he do it? Comes across the start-finish line. And no, Butler doesn't improve in the end, stays in 4th place. So at the moment, top 3 on the grid are the top 3 in the championship. Jack Smith ahead of Jack McIntyre, ahead of Jordan Brennan. Now, in the silver category, it's very close as well. Less than 1/10 of a second right now, separating Dave Buki and Paul Zanatachi. And those two, Jack, are tied for the championship lead. So the cream, as they say, does rise to the top, except Andy Carroll. He didn't get the script, did he? Because he goes quite a bit quicker than them. 8th place overall, the fastest silver driver so far.
Yeah, but if he's doing it by cutting the corners like he did just did then through Abbey, it'll be discounted. But to be honest, I think he probably would have done it legally. It's an absolute flyer from Andy Carroll. He'll be very pleased with that one. And I'm not entirely sure where he's going, to be honest, but he's clearly not going to do a second lap on these tyres. He'll probably come in and pit. As you mentioned before, Dave Buki and Paul Zanatachi, though, very, very close in championship points, very close in qualifying. Looking forward to seeing how that race develops. And crucially, it's a full reverse grid. We're not wimping around here with top 10 reverse grids or anything. It's a full reverse grid, which means you get a whole host of silver drivers put right to the front of the field in race number 2. Both races are 20 minutes. The first one obviously dictated by qualifying position. The second race, as I mentioned, full reverse grid, also 20 minutes. So you want to be sticking around to catch how these drivers get on. But that's really where the points are scored throughout this weekend. Race 1, I wouldn't say it's bordering on processional, Andy, but you can sort of get an idea where you might want to line up. In race number 2, it's all about racecraft, and that can really separate the men from the boys.
Yeah, most definitely, and especially here at Silverstone, where you can overtake, you should be able to make some good progress in that reverse grid race. At Alton Park, we saw 1 or 2 incidents that were really just caused by quick drivers coming from the back of the grid and some slightly less quick drivers trying to hang on to every position they could at the front, as of course they're perfectly entitled to do. And that did lead, when they met in the middle, it led to a few shenanigans out on track. I'm not saying this reverse grid race this evening will be devoid of contact, far from it, but there is a bit more space for them to make that progress up through the order. Eric Axelsen here. Eric had 2 top 10 finishes last time, a 10th in race 1, a 7th in race 2. 5th fastest so far, though, is Eric, and he's another driver that I don't think we've seen the best of yet.
No, he started to come into his own a little bit on Tuesday night when we were doing the MX5 Championship here on VRRC. He was one of the drivers that, you could be argued for driver of the day, but the problem is he doesn't really have that killer fire at the beginning of the races, that sort of that ability to instigate a move when it doesn't seem 100% on, is sort of making that commitment to the 50% moves and pulling them off that a few other drivers do. Some say it's sensible, but towards the end of race 2 on Tuesday, he was very much going for the throat. We saw almost a different kind of Eric Axelsen, and I'm sort of half hoping that we're seeing that from the start this time around as well, because he has really good pace, just sometimes with this sort of slight lack of decision-making, that indecisiveness, ends up in the wrong part of the track at the wrong time, and you really do have to create your own luck, as you know, Andy, when you're out there. So hopefully we see Eric really pushing forward.
Yeah, certainly got the pace, hasn't he, to be up there on the third row at the moment. Nicky Taylor here into the top 10. He is right at the back of the top 10, actually. I noticed that Andy Carroll is still top silver driver, but Zanatachi and Buki have now been separated by Lewis Brown, who is a little further back than I expected, actually. Lewis Brown, mini challenge front runner, of course, had a 5th place finish in the first race at Alton Park last time. So a week ago, he was top 5 on outright pace, and here he is down in 14th place. Now, it could be that he's just not getting on with Silverstone. He hasn't got the car working right. Remember, it's a fixed setup series, this, so there's only so much you can do to tweak the car if you're not all that happy out there. But I find it hard to believe that he'd be this far off the pace, so I wonder, has he been suffering with some of those dreaded track limits infringements, because it's very easy here to get a lap time deleted.
Yeah, I'm looking as well at the amount of laps he's put in, because sometimes you do see drivers, not being able to take part in the first part of qualifying for whatever reason, but he has put 7 or 8 laps, it is now 8 laps, and he does go into 9th, so maybe there was just a case of he couldn't get into the rhythm, maybe there was a bit of traffic, track limits, I'm not entirely sure. But he seems to have put in a half-decent lap. That's his banker. 4.5 minutes to go. He'll be hoping, as everybody is really, to start pushing the limits and finding out what he can do to the car and seeing exactly where the grip is at Silverstone. I'm sure, as you said, as a mini-challenge driver, he knows this track pretty much like the back of his hand, and you can already see him cocking the rear wheel up a little bit, so he knows how to get a front-wheel drive car around it. It's just, as you mentioned, doesn't seem to be clicking. But if you look at the gap, Andy, between first and 18th is less than a second. 0.8 of a second, pretty much, separates the top 19 drivers, or 18 drivers, however you want to really say it. So we are talking about minuscule margins. He could catch half a tenth and probably promote himself a place or 2.
Jack McIntyre misses out on pole position by 5/1000ths of a second. That is incredibly tight. How on earth? You couldn't get much closer than that, could you, without actually going on to pole position. Jack McIntyre on an absolute mission here, but given how evenly matched these front runners are, and bear in mind, Early days, I know, but those top 3 on the grid, as I said, are the top 3 in the points right now. Given how close they are on pace here, you really want to be qualifying at the front of that group because it's so difficult to overtake somebody who is basically running exactly the same speed as you. So if McIntyre can find that extra, 6 1,000ths of a second that he would need to take pole, then it's worth doing. Except now, unbelievably,
Wow.
Jordan Brennan slots in between the two. You wouldn't think that was possible. He misses out on pole by 2 1,000ths of a second, and the top 3 on the grid covered by 5 1,000ths. That is insane.
That is if you saw those 3 drivers come across the line and the margin between them was 0.005 of a second, you wouldn't be able to, the naked eye would have no chance of telling who's coming first and who's coming third. Brennan splitting the eye of the needle is an understatement. That is a quite sensational lap time by all 3 drivers. Rob Butler's not far away, but it looks like a chasm in the fact that it's half a tenth. And it's down to 4th place. Oh, I cannot wait for this one, Andy.
I can't believe what I've just seen there. That is incredible. Andy Carroll across the line stays 10th. Mick Sutton is now up into 2nd place in the silver category. He's just over half a tenth behind Carroll, which, like you say, that's an absolute age, isn't it, based on how close this qualifying session has been. But my word, that is tight at the top with just over 2 minutes to go. Drivers often at the end of qualifying sessions like to look back over the data, don't they? Look back over the telemetry and see where they were losing time, see where maybe they could have found that extra 10th or 10th and a half that they needed to take pole position. You could analyse the data from this qualifying session for about 3 weeks, and I don't think you'd be able to find 5 1,000ths of a second. They are all on the limit, and that is how evenly matched those top drivers are right now. Dave Newsham here coming towards us. He is 8th place right now. Just a quick thing to point out as well as the qualifying session winds down. Isaac Smith, who you'll see is 7th on the timing tower. It looks a bit like he's being classed as a silver driver. He's not. That's just a silver Cupra logo. Because it was also last minute, he hasn't been allocated his gold class sticker, but Isaac Smith is running in the gold class, so just one thing to remember when looking at the timing screens.
Yeah, so I was about to interrupt you there anyway, Andy, because I was about to bring up Isaac Smith and Robin Walters. If you wanted to find a gap that was smaller than Jack Smith to Jordan Brennan, it's 2,000ths of a second, as we mentioned before, something ridiculous like that. That is actually the gap between Eric Axelson and Isaac Smith, and Robin Walters is in the middle of that. So that is incredibly close. Robin Walters 1,000th of a second behind Axelson, and Isaac Smith is 1,000th of a second behind Robin Walters. So although the top 3 are extremely close as well, the gap between 6th and 8th is actually even closer, which is quite incredible. Although I think Jack Smith has actually just elongated that by a couple of thousandths.
Yeah, you say it's close at the top, but honestly, he's pulled out an enormous margin now, hasn't he? Jack Smith is a whole 5 1,000ths quicker than anyone else now. Top 3 still separated by less than 100th of a second. There goes Jack onto what will be his final qualifying lap of the session. Then time winding down into the final 20 seconds now. But if you're already on a lap, when the time ticks to 0, you are entitled to complete it. But at this stage, you would imagine the tyres will have been past their best for most of these front runners. Indeed, Jordan Brennan already in the pit lane, so he's not going any further. But wait and see whether Jack or other Jack McIntyre, can maybe wrestle a bit more time out of the car. Carl Felvers here coming towards us, also trying to find a late improvement, and could do with it as well, because he is the slowest of the gold drivers at the moment.
Yeah, Kyle only recently been promoted into the gold categorization. He was a very quick silver driver, but obviously if you become a quick silver driver, as you know, Andy, you've got to be moved up into that gold, haven't you, at some point? So Kyle just getting up there, not winning as many races as obviously he's used to, shall we say, but he'll be there again soon, I'm sure. Jack Smith, though, is currently there, and he's on a green Sector 1 as well. This could be even quicker by Jack Smith. A 107.1 is his current lap time. He comes across the line and beats it by half a tenth. So we were saying about how incredibly close, as I mentioned before, it's almost looking like a chasm now between first and second, separated by 500ths of a second.
Well, poor Rob Butler's got some real head scratching to do now because he's over a 10th off position. That's disastrous. Jack McIntyre across the line couldn't quite find the few thousandths that he needed to get back onto the front row. And here is Rob Butler. Can he do anything about getting back within a 10th of pole? No, not now. His tyres past their best. I think then that is pretty much it. Everybody has completed their lap times. Martin Johnson, the last one to come through, and doesn't improve on 17th. It's Jack Smith that has the pole position here for round number 3 of the championship, alongside Jordan Brennan on row 1, with Andy Carroll and Mick Sutton at the front of the silver class grid. Race 1 just around the corner. Join us again in a few minutes for the first race of the night.
At SmartFi, we do things differently. It starts with our 100% buyback guarantee. When you buy SmartFi token on the Smart Portal and hold it for a year or more, we'll buy back your token at the price you paid for any reason under the sun. You can borrow cash with our collateralized crypto loans or earn up to 13% interest on your holdings. SmartFi unleashes the true potential of cryptocurrencies. And there are so many reasons, now more than ever, to get involved. Join us today at smartfi.com. Grow your wealth and secure your future with simple, smart, and safe finance.
An incredibly tight qualifying session has just concluded here at Silverstone, and the Maximum Networks Touring Car Trophy, powered by VRRC, is set for a fantastic night of racing. It's the points leader, Jack Smith, who got the pole position, and Jack joins us now. Jack, that was pretty close, wasn't it?
I'll be honest, boys, I didn't expect to have this pole position. A 7-1 was, quite nearly 2 tenths off the pace in, before this event. I think Brennan put in a 6-9 at some point during the practice before this race. So to be on pole with a 7-1 is, it's strange, really. But we'll take it, and we'll see what we can do in race 1.
It goes to show, doesn't it, that, you can do hundreds of practice laps and get down to 106.9, but it's all about rising to the occasion when you need to, and in those 15 minutes you found the pace. How did you do that? Were you able to use a bit of a slipstream from someone, or did you go it alone?
No, I had a bit of a mistake on my first flyer and had that Delta just sort of sitting there, and just gained it all through Stowe. Just found that line, you have to get it perfectly right through there. And it found me half a tenth, and that was enough to improve my time and set me ahead. But yeah, no tow here. I did try, but it doesn't really work too well on this sim. So yeah, but it probably will work in the race, that's for sure.
Well, that was my next question then, because given how tight the times are, it's unlikely that you'll be able to repeat your Alton Park race 1 where you started on pole and after the first lap or so at least you were able to pull away. So are you anticipating you're going to have to get your elbows out a bit here to hold on to that lead?
Yeah, I was fully expecting a bit of a challenge here today. So it's not out of the question we'll be battling the entire race, that's for sure. With it being a minute lap, I'd imagine everyone's very, very similar race pace wise. So we'll see what happens.
Excellent stuff. Well, Jack, congratulations on pole position. Best of luck for the first race. We'll let you go on and prepare now, but we'll see how you get on in about 20 minutes.
No worries. Cheers, guys.
So, Jack Smith then has... now, drama here.
Ooh.
We're having a couple of drivers disconnecting, and one of them is Jack McIntyre. Now, that's good news for Jack Smith. He's back now, we're hearing. Yes, he is. Thank goodness for that, lining up third on the grid. That could have been rather dramatic. Jack Oliphant. Far too many Jacks involved in this championship. Thankfully, he's there, though. But if he is experiencing some connection issues, that will be playing on his mind, no doubt.
Yeah, it'll be one of those things where it's one of the last things you need, really, isn't it? As you're sort of lining up on the grid, you're sort of trying to get yourself all set, and all of a sudden your screen goes black or whatever happened. Hopefully, he just sort of exited and came back in for a separate reason. It wasn't really any kind of major disconnection issue or anything like that. Because otherwise, as you said, it will be playing on his mind. But I'd say hopefully he's here. Hopefully Jack Mack is here. He seems to be lining up in third place. And I would expect the top 3 to potentially going 3 wide through most of this circuit anyway. So, yeah, looking forward to seeing how they crack on. As you mentioned before, though, hopefully we just don't get any of those internet gremlins that plague sim racing so much.
Yes, and sim commentators as well, as I found out this
sure.
week, I'm afraid. So, 4 hearing you. If I vanish all of a sudden, I didn't fall down a well. Internet issues seem to be going round at the moment. Anyway, race is not that far away from getting started. On pole position is Jack Smith, the championship leader, with his two nearest points rivals lining up right behind him. Jordan Brennan and Jack McIntyre, second and third, respectively, on the grid. Brennan has his teammate right behind him. Look, Rob Butler making his first appearance of the season, fourth on the grid, ahead of Dave Newsham and Eric Axelson, with Robin Walters, Isaac Smith, Lewis Brown and Andy Carroll, the silver class pole sitter, rounding out that top 10. 10 seconds then before round number 3 of the Maximum Networks Touring Car Trophy, powered by VRRC, gets underway. Red lights go on, they go out. Now we're away and racing. Who controls the wheel spin and gets into Abbey Corner first? Looked like a pretty even start from the front row men. Yes, it was. Jack Smith gets over to the inside to cover from Brennan, who switches to the outside line, but he won't go right round the outside. Instead, tries to carry the speed out of the right-hander through the left and into the first braking zone. It looks like Brennan has his nose up the inside. McIntyre sniffing in third as well, but super late on the brakes for the pole sitter. Too late on the brakes. He runs out wide, does Jack Smith, and Brennan gets the lead.
Yeah, he hits the curb as well, which I think just allows McIntyre to get half a car's width up his inside, and all of a sudden this can go from bad to worse as well. Butler looks interested. He's getting a sniff at this, and he wants a podium position right on the starting, and he has actually. Rob Butler getting his nose ahead. How are they going to go down into the braking zone? But what we can pretty much guarantee is the fact that Jordan Brennan is leading this race. Butler on the inside, and McIntyre. Butler goes from fourth to second in the space of basically a straight. Smith now has to deal with being in fourth place. It's all gone Pete Tong for him, but Jordan Brennan's absolutely flying, and looking at his pace in qualifying and practice, it's going to be hard to stop him.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you can make a break in the early stages here, that could be enough for someone like Jordan Brennan to go on and take a pretty comfortable race victory. Right now, the race is for second place. It's McIntyre who holds that position at the end of lap 1. As you said, is third. Smith is fourth. Dave Newsham right there with them in fifth as well. The four of them covered by next to nothing as they cross the line. Isaac Smith, in his first official race now as a fully registered championship driver, is sixth, ahead of Eric Axelson. All kicking off there. McIntyre and Butler side by side through Village. I think there may have been some contact there, Jack.
Yeah, it looked like Butler was maybe nudged a little bit wide, encouraged wide, shall we say, is probably the official touring car slang for it, as Jack Smith is encouraged off the circuit by an ever-present touring car driver, a very experienced, touring car driver in Dave Newsham, who I was actually going to give a shout-out before. He's done incredibly well in this qualifying. Here comes Isaac Smith and Eric Axelson. Eric Axelson dives out of it, but Isaac Smith goes up the inside into Stowe, and it's a great move by him. Jack Smith is really struggling to carry on and get any kind of momentum in this race so far. He's just being eaten alive, and his named compatriot, Isaac Smith, is sent spinning by contact with him and Dave Newsham, and I'm not entirely sure whether that was contact with Jack Smith from behind. We didn't get a clear view of it, but Isaac Smith and Jack Smith still going at it, and Jack Smith's gone round, and he's collected, and he's made a huge pile-up as well as he continues to spin, and hopefully stays on the racing line. He doesn't manage it quite, but luckily I think everybody's just about got through.
Oh, for a split second there, I forgot that this was a sim race, not a real one, and I winced when that car came straight towards us there. Thankfully, he will be okay, but that is an absolute disaster for the championship leader, Jack Smith. What an awful opening 2 laps of racing that was. Everything that could have gone wrong for him went wrong, and just when it looked like he was settling into a bit of a rhythm, had that contact with McIntyre at Village, as you said, and that really set about his ultimate demise. He's continued look at the back of the pack, so he could still gain more places, but a reminder, you only score points within your class, and right now, he has got a whole heap of silver-graded drivers directly ahead of him. There goes Carl Felvers up the inside of Robin Walters. A bit more contact, sideways through Stowe they go, and wheel to wheel they go now through the Vale and down towards Club Corner. Wherever you look, there is action. People trying to get as much here, Jack, as they can when they can get it.
Yeah, the general rule of VRRC is if there's nothing happening on track, point your cameras at Nicky Taylor or Carl Felvers and there will be a race happening. These two pretty much glued rim to rim most of the time. And Martin Johnson's getting on the mix as well. He's looking at the inside of Nicky Taylor, who's has a fantastic livery as well, by the way. He put an Instagram post out saying that everybody should look out for it, and I can understand why. It does look very smart indeed. But this is for that sort of top 10 area, and Martin Johnson sends a huge one at the inside of Nicky Taylor, and I think, yeah, he outbroke himself completely, which means Nicky has an opportunity to get back, and you know that Nicky's going to try and take it. And by the looks of it, he's just about managed it. More contacts, Robin is racing, encouraged wide there, I think, Martin Johnson. And here comes Andy Carroll. Once he was qualifying extremely well halfway through the session. Didn't quite turn out to be a silver pole position, but at the moment, he's leading the way.
Yeah, well, he's about to anyway if he completes this move on Johnson, which I think he will. Johnson getting involved there with Nicky Taylor, who is not in the same class as him, has ended up costing him the class lead, look, because Carroll does now go through. Johnson, you can see there in the black, yellow, green and red car, slots in behind him and now has it all to do again to get the class lead away. Mick Sutton is third in class. What of the joint championship leaders? Well, Dave Buki is fourth in the silver class and Zanatachi fifth. Neither of them seem to have quite the ultimate pace at the moment. There is Dave Buki, the owner of Kinetic Motorsport, the real world motorsport team. They are the colours adorning that Cupra TCR car as it heads into the first corner. But Buki and Zanatachi just buried in the midfield here, not able to make progress.
Yeah, by the looks of it, though, that's Lewis Brown going. No, it's Mick Sutton, sorry, going off, and I think he may. Oh, I tell you what, he got away with that, didn't he? I thought there was going to be a massive collection there, but luckily not. But there is there. Lewis Brown gets turned around, and we're not entirely sure who that was actually in contact with. Did you manage to see that, Andy?
It might have been Zanatachi, actually. I think it was. I think he got a bit sideways, but that was possibly a rejoin that erred on the unsafe side, you would have to say. He was out wide anyway after contact at the previous corner and just sort of floored the throttle and hoped for the best. Johnson back ahead of Carroll. Look for the silver class lead. Didn't see how that happened, but he's gone back through into first position. Now, what he really wants to do is settle down, get away from Carroll, and then maybe just follow Nicky Taylor up the road. He doesn't need to pass Taylor, just needs to follow him home, and he's on course for the silver class victory. Speaking of following, that's what everyone is doing to Jordan Brennan. Jordan Brennan is 2.1 seconds up the road at the head of the field. Jack McIntyre still in second place. There is the race leader, Jordan Brennan. So far, so good. I mean, he gained most of those 2 seconds in the opening lap, really, didn't he? And since then, he's been able to pace himself.
Yeah, even on that last lap, though, he was 0.2 of a second quicker than Jack McIntyre. And actually, his best lap, Jordan Brennan, would have been good enough for pole overall, I believe. So it's pretty sensational from him at the moment. And he's just sort of chilling now, maintaining that gap. Although Jack McIntyre has just gone purple in Sector 1, so it's not all over just yet. Robin Walters hunkered up behind Carl Felvers. Felvers feeling the pressure enough to go slightly inside, but not enough for Robin Walters to be put off. He slided up the inside into Stowe. Felvers tried to carry the momentum, a little lock of the rear wheel as he cocks the back leg, but it looks like Felvers is actually, he had to come back on the circuit at some point. Now it looked a little bit of an aggressive manoeuvre over to the right-hand side. Walters not put off, though, and he's still trying to race as hard as he can. Nicky Taylor's been given his RSVP and his invite because he's come along for the ride.
Joel Lask we have lost from the race, unfortunately. You can see him, his name highlighted red in the timing tower. On board then with Nicky Taylor. He's got a grandstand view of this battle, but he'd quite like to be ahead of it. Carries all the speed in the world through Abbey and somehow finds a Cupra-sized hole to fit into. He gets himself ahead of Walters and then immediately gets up the inside of Kyle Felvers. Kyle won't have any of that, though. Tries to fight back and just ends up outbraking himself. Loses 1, maybe 2 positions. Yes, he does. And here comes a third because now the silver class leader, Martin Johnson, is up the inside as well. Fantastic stuff. Andy Carroll, of course, wants to go with him because he doesn't want to get any gold class drivers between himself and his class leader. This is frenetic stuff and honestly not what I expected. I thought the racing here would be close in the first race. I didn't anticipate this much back and forth, but this has been terrific.
It has indeed, yeah, proper touring car stuff, and especially in this sort of midfield area. I mean, the front lot have sort of sorted themselves out, and it's a little bit more what we expected in race number 1. But this mid-pack is pretty much exactly what we're expecting from all the field in race 2. So it's delightful to have it here in front of us now. Andy Carroll trying to push on strong, as we said before, and we've said quite a few times last week as well. The problem with Carl Felvers says right now is he's fighting with all these drivers, but the majority of them aren't actually making any kind of impact in this championship whatsoever. You're just sort of getting in the way of each other at this point, based on the fact that you're pretty similar in times and similar out on the track. But in terms of championship points, if Felvers gets past Johnson, doesn't mean anything, but he needs to get past Johnson to try and attack Robin Walters. So it's really, sort of do or die stuff here, and you can see there's a little bit of argy-bargy. We've seen that plenty of times, and Johnson reading the situation and running wide, giving Felvers the space, coming back across the circuit now, making sure that door is slammed shut, and Felvers knows where to go. But at the moment, the front two, Robin Walters and Nicky Taylor, are pulling away from this gap. There's a massive margin already been increased to, and Andy Carroll looks to the outside of Carl Felvers.
Yeah, he does. Oh, Felvers runs wide, though. That'll make the job easy for Carroll. So Carroll slips through. Well, actually, no, doesn't get the job done. And now, of course, The next corner goes to the left into Club, so Felvus will have the inside line to defend, and Carroll has to slot in behind him. Right now, Kyle Felvus is Martin Johnson's best friend because he's keeping that handy buffer between himself and the next best silver graded driver. Dave Buki and Paul Zanatachi here, I was just about to mention them, they both gained a position as well. I think it's Mick Sutton they've got past, so Buki now 3rd and Zanatachi 4th. That's 13th and 14th overall. And of course, if they stay right here, then for the reverse grid later on, they would find themselves lining up a little bit ahead of some of the silver drivers that are currently outscoring them.
Yeah, which would be obviously delightful for them. Kenny Press is, I believe, really high in the championship in the silver as well. He's all the way down in 17th at the moment. It's just been overtaken by Lewis Brown. Obviously, it doesn't really make a difference because he's a gold driver. But Kenny Press, obviously, will start that reverse grid in a very nice, comfortable position, exactly like he did at Alton Park, which is what gained him so many points at Alton Park. Kenny full well knows that he's not the quickest driver out there by any means, but what he did do at Alton was just keep consistent, keep out of trouble, wait for the quick guys to sort of catch up to them, and once they had caught up to them, use them to carry his momentum forward and not have to worry about the silvers catching him. So very impressed with Kenny last week. Normally, as I said, not all that consistent here at VRRC, but today, last week he was fantastic. Today, hopefully, we're seeing a similar story as Robin Walters looks up the inside and Nicky Taylor through Abbey. Oh, it's a quick corner, Andy. You got to be brave to be on the outside. You got to be brave to be on the inside. That was lucky that they came off all clean there.
Yeah, the car on the inside there is always running the risk of understeering into the car on the outside.
Yes.
It's very hard to go side by side through that corner, so Robin Walters did well to back out of that, actually, before they came to blows. Now, at the front of the field, Jordan Brennan is no longer being caught by Jack McIntyre. That's because McIntyre's pace has faded slightly, and he is being caught by Rob Butler. Butler's been a tenth or so faster than McIntyre on the last couple of laps, and you can see the result that that's had. It means that he's now only a few car lengths behind McIntyre. Now, Butler really needs some points here because he came out of Alton Park with very few points because Isaac Smith, who was deputising for him, didn't even finish the first race. So Butler needs to try and get himself ahead of McIntyre, but McIntyre also, like Brennan, will want to capitalise on the bad race here that Jack Smith is having, knowing that Jack is likely to bounce back in race 2 in the silver class. There's contact between the joint championship leaders. Oh dear, Zanatachi going past Dave Buki, but Davey wasn't going to let him go without a fight, as always. There was a little bit of contact on the apex, but Zanatachi held it and holds the place, with Buki immediately having to defend from Mick Sutton.
Yeah, Mick Sutton is a wily old racer. He is. He's been around in VRRC a lot longer than I have, put it that way. So he is very much up for the fight, and a lot of these drivers will know all about Mick Sutton as well, but one driver out there who won't know about Mick Sutton is actually Dave Buki. So I'm interested to see how that one carries up. Lewis Brown and Jack Smith. Lewis Brown and Jack Smith fighting it out. Now, this is for position, not the position they were hoping for, but they're both gold drivers fighting for 16th place.
Yes, so this is quite significant then, in a way. Here's another gold driver battling with a silver. This is Kyle Felvus up the inside of silver leader Martin Johnson. Martin is determined not to lose this place, but in defending it so rigorously, he does run the risk of allowing Andy Carroll to close back in. He's back up the inside of Felvus, but I'm not convinced this is a fight that he needs to be having. Carroll's right there with them now, and he's going to look to the inside through the double apex right-hander at Club. Johnson with the wider line, though, carries good momentum out past the Silverstone wing and on to another lap. This will be the 12th lap of the race for these three. Johnson again peeking to the inside. Fair play to Johnson here. He's getting stuck in. He's taking some interesting lines through the corners. Yeah, I can't help but think that if he just worked with Kyle Felvus here, they might both get away from Carroll.
Yeah, but they might not have as much fun, although that's probably not fun for either driver in the end of the day, is it? As I say it, I can sort of see it happening. I should have held back on my words. But here comes Carroll. Is still not through, and actually it's pretty much as they were. They sort of bounced off each other, but both luckily ended up facing the right way, which obviously is more than ideal, shall we say, because we thought there was going to be a massive collection. But one of the advantages, Andy, of front-wheel drive is the fact that you can just put your foot down, and the engine will pretty much take care of it for you.
Yes, and I'll tell you who is putting their foot down is the car you can see looming in the mirror. Paul Zanatachi's caught this group now, so the top three silver drivers all together, and here we go again. Johnson defending his lead now from Carroll into Club. He will hold on to the position, but those defensive lines are holding them all up, and look, the purple car of Zanatachi is right there with them now, so Paul might not have had a brilliant qualifying session, but he's certainly coming good in the race. He's pulled over a second over Dave Buki, and immediately having caught Carroll, goes on the attack, tries to get to the outside into Abbey. There was almost contact under braking there for the fastest corner on the track, and Zanatachi still manages to carry good speed through the turn, through farm, into the braking zone at Village, and Carroll now has to switch from attack to defence to try and hold on to that place.
Well, you mentioned that he managed to pull a second over Buki, but that second will be evaporated pretty much instantly now he's caught up to that fight, unfortunately for him. Smith and Brown still battling over basically last place of the gold, and battling hard as well. Neither one of them wants to drop this 1 point or whatever they're fighting for at the moment. Smith really trying to push on strong, and there is going to be contact into Stowe, and that was a little bit naughty, I think, from Lewis Brown. Or was it Mick Sutton? It was actually Mick Sutton, isn't it? It's not Lewis Brown. Apologies about that. That is actually a move that isn't even for overall, class position. So a little bit strange how Mick Sutton pushed that hard. But I suppose he's got his own race to run, and he doesn't want to be dropped by Dave Buki.
Yeah, I suppose so. But again, now that Smith has gone through, in theory, Jack should be quicker than the cars around him. So maybe Mick can chase him onto the back of that silver class lead battle, which, again, is all kicking off into Abbey. And here comes Carroll at the inside of Johnson. That's never going to work. Oh, where's Johnson gone? He's well off onto the grass, and that will work, actually, because Carroll takes advantage, gets the lead away. Zanatachi goes to the inside as well. And Martin Johnson, who's led almost every lap of this race in the silver class, finds himself on the ropes a little bit now. He's lost the lead to Carroll. Zanatachi is still at the inside as they go down into the loop. That's desperately late on the brakes for Johnson. He stays in front, but at what cost? Well, actually, it's Buki that's quicker than all of them off the corner, and now he pulls to the inside of Zanatachi.
I tell you what, I wasn't wrong last week, was I, when I said that the silver category is going to be the one to watch. Here comes 3 wide into Stowe. 4 minutes to go. Buki, Smith, Zanatachi, and one of them is actually Jack Smith, who's obviously the gold driver. I think has got around every single one of them by going flying around the outside of Stowe. And that's absolutely brilliant from Jack Smith, proving why he should be probably in the contention to win this race. Obviously, he qualified on pole position. This isn't where he wanted to be, but he will be basically in contest for a race victory. It'll just be in the silver category, or around the silver category, should we say.
Yes, and you'd imagine with the reverse grid, he'll be a contender for the race 2 victory. But my argument here, and I made this a week ago and no one listened to me, but my argument here is that the further up the order he finishes here, the further down the order he will start race 2. And every position he's gaining against silver graded drivers isn't doing him the slightest bit of good in the championship. He doesn't score any more points for beating all of these silver drivers. It's only his position within class that counts. So I know that he wants to try and stay ahead of Lewis Brown, but having got a car or two between himself and Lewis, it might actually be in his best interest to not keep fighting forward. Actually, he might be about to lose ground anyway, because that move up the inside of Johnson didn't work, and it held him up enough that Dave Buki is up the inside of him, heading towards Stowe.
Yeah, and we'll just see about what they do here. Look 3 wide, but Buki very sensibly went out of the move, and Smith does go back through on Johnson. But in my opinion, you're absolutely right, Andy, because let's say he just drops back, and he drops, say, in the end behind Lewis Brown. I'll have to stop myself again, because these guys are still throwing everything at it, and there's a little bit of a slide there by Johnson, but he holds on to it. Smith still in top position. So I'll try and finish my point now. You're absolutely right. Let's say he just drops back and he drops behind Lewis Brown. Worst comes to worst. And really, he's only losing out on 1 point. And then he has a pretty much clear run, though, at race number 2 and a race victory at race 2. Where he is now is right in the middle of a touring car grid, which, for anybody out there who's watched a touring car grid, knows that that's probably one of the worst places to be on any grid ever, because it's just going to be an absolute melee into turn 1. And we're very much looking forward to watching it. But as a driver, you want to try and be as clean and as concise as possible. And that's not going to be possible from 10th on the grid.
No, that's right. Good point made by Tom O'Farrell, by the way, who is responsible for producing this brilliant coverage right now. He says that the drivers don't have the luxury that we do of the gold and silver markers next to drivers' names. They don't have that timing tower, so unless they've memorised who's in their class, they might not actually be all that aware who it is that they're racing with. Carl Felvers is aware that he's racing, though, because he's rather been racing everybody so far in this race. He's now trying to defend from Andy Carroll. Again, this is a gold-graded driver defending from a silver-graded driver, but 10th place overall up for grabs. Carroll just drops back for the time being. Dropping back is also something that Rob Butler has been doing. He was a 10th quicker than McIntyre on the previous lap, but that gap between 2nd and 3rd has grown to 9/10 of a second. As Jack, there is only just over a minute of this race to go. I don't know where the time's gone.
Yeah, and we haven't seen our race leader at all, really, have we? Oh, there he is. Right on cue, Tom O'Farrell. Sharp to that one. Jordan Brennan absolute flown away with it. Obviously, he got that, I can't even remember how he got the race lead. Obviously, it was a very dramatic moment with Jack Smith, who obviously ended up flying a little bit further backwards, but Brennan's been absolutely superb since he's got into the race lead. McIntyre hasn't been able to live with the pace. Rob Butler's dropped away slightly, but look at the top three. In a race that has been so unbelievably close on our cameras pretty much constantly, these three drivers have not got the script. They've just driven away, checked out early, and on to the next one.
Yeah, they're missing out on all the fun, really, aren't they?
They
Further
are.
back. The silver class has been the place to be in this race if you want some screen time. Anyway, Nicky Taylor's getting some screen time now, though, because he's pressuring Rich Hayden. We haven't really mentioned Rich. In fact, I don't think I mentioned him at all tonight. But Rich, who is now officially entered into the gold class, as was always supposed to be the case, is running a very strong 7th place at the moment. And that's a decent run for him, defending there from Taylor and Walters. Now, meanwhile, Andy Carroll has got Jack Smith behind him. Smith, of course, wants to get a move on here because whilst Carroll is not in his class, Kyle Felvers, the car directly ahead of them, is. So having cleared Carroll, he leaves himself now, a lap and a bit to try and get another position within class. This could be big. In fact, he's not going to have a lap and a bit because the time is down to 0, and Jordan Brennan is coming out of the final corner to take the checkered flag. Jordan Brennan comes across the start-finish line then and claims his first victory of the season. Jack McIntyre in second with Rob Butler third. Those three in the end having a relatively quiet time of things. Dave Newsham will come home in fourth. A solid effort from him, ahead of Eric Axelson. Isaac Smith in sixth. And then it's all kicked off further back because both Nicky Taylor and Walters have gone past Rich Hayden at the final corner, and Jack Richwood going a little bit slower there than he should have been, so I suspect foul play.
Potentially, yeah. Jack Smith also hasn't got past Carl Felvis over the line either. Only just so. That's a minuscule margin. Andy Carroll takes the silver victory. That's worth noting for sure because that was very, very hard fought from Andy Carroll. Martin Johnson in second place in the silver as well, but 13th overall. Lewis Brown last, unfortunately, in the gold, 14th overall. Dave Buki, Paul Zanatachi, 15th and 16th. Mick Sutton, 17th. Kenny Press in 18th. Simon Thorpe in 19th. And by the looks of it, will be lining up on pole position will be Eric Bolton as he comes across the line to take the checkered flag.
And just like that, round number 3 of the championship is over. That was definitely race of the season so far because actually, for as frenetic as it was pretty clean. There was the odd bit of contact, but generally speaking, nothing too much. So, yeah, really, really good racing there amongst, in particular, the silver category. And now, as you make the point, Jack, that will become the fight at the very front of the field, because for race 2, we invert the entire field. So those that struggle in that race now get their moment in the spotlight at the front of the field, and those like Brennan, McIntyre and Butler have to come from the very back of the grid. So it is Jordan Brennan that wins the race. It is Jack McIntyre second with Rob Butler third. The silver category goes the way of Andy Carroll, who finishes in 12th place overall. And I believe we can we will, in a moment, I should say, have a chat with our podium finishers. We'll take a very short break before we do. Don't go anywhere, though. Race 2 incoming. The third round of the Maximum Networks Touring Car Trophy, powered by VRRC, was an absolute cracker here from the Silverstone International Circuit. It was a race that was won by Jordan Brennan, and Jordan joins us here in the commentary box now. Jordan, I would say what a race, but actually you missed out on most of the fun. You got the job done on the opening lap, got the lead, and then checked out.
Yeah, it was, from what I saw in the mirror, it looked quite busy behind. But yeah, I made the move on the first, set it up on the first corner and just away from there. It went quite well.
Is the understatement of the year. Yeah, that was pretty much a pitch-perfect performance, and we expected this, really, after your really strong practice practice pace. Obviously, it's a fixed setup series, this, so for someone to really click with a track like this in a fixed setup series, it must be a track that you just enjoy and naturally seem to be quick at.
To be honest, I don't like this track.
Oh,
it's quite, I don't know, it's a bit difficult in this car, but yeah. I put a few laps in, so yeah, it's paid off.
There we go. Jordan, one last question then, because we need to rattle through these interviews before race 2, but now you've got the reverse grid race to deal with. How are you feeling about that one?
Slightly concerned, because last week didn't go too well. It's just going to be, I think I'm just going to sit back a little bit more than I did last time, because I was going for moves that probably weren't on at the time, so we'll just sit back and just see what happens.
Awesome stuff. Well, best of luck out for that one then, Jordan. Meanwhile, Jack, I believe, is with our second place finisher. Jack.
Yeah, Jack McIntyre, obviously congratulations on the second place. Obviously it was a bit frantic at the start, and then it sort of mellowed out a little bit. You had Rob Butler chasing you down as hard as he possibly could. Were you getting a little bit tense?
Cheers, yeah, that was tough. That was the full 20 minutes of pressure from Rob behind. After a good race at the start on the first lap, it was kind of 20 minutes of qualifying and trying not to make any mistakes. So just about held it together. My tyres weren't happy with me by the end. So I think Rob had the pace, but it's a pretty hard track to get past on if you don't have a lot of pace advantage. So yeah, managed to hold it.
Good stuff. And one last question before we let you go and get ready for race 2. You've now taken the championship lead going into this reverse grid now by 2 points ahead of Jordan Brennan. Is that weighing your mind at all, or do you just wish I never said anything?
No, we're so far off the end of the season. It's all just about consistency here, and I think really the championship's going to be won with the reverse grid races. So yeah, this will be the important one.
Well, thanks very much, Jack. We'll let you go and get ready. And Andy, we'll move on to Rob Butler.
Yeah, Rob, good to have you here, mate. We missed you a week ago at Alton Park, but yeah, you've arrived here at the second round and immediately on the pace. You've got to be quite happy with that.
Yeah, if I could just stop making mistakes. I'm too old for this now, Andy. It's just too many mistakes. I had the pace. I had Jordan's race pace, I would say, in the middle to end of the race, but yeah, I just made a few mistakes, and Jack didn't make any, so that's why I'm third and they're second, but they drove fantastic, both of them, and yeah, I look forward to the reverse grid.
Yeah, well, we best let you go and prepare for that, but if you can stay out of trouble, we might be chatting to you again
I'll try.
After that second race. Best of luck, mate. So, Rob Butler there then. We don't have time, unfortunately, to chat to our silver class winner, Andy Carroll. We might have a word with him after race 2, maybe, if we've got time. The reason we don't have time is because the second race of the night is just about 20 seconds or so away. Eric Bolton on pole then, Thorpe alongside him with Kenny Press on row 2 and Mick Sutton for company. Those front runners from race 1, well, the race winner starts 20th, Jack McIntyre, who was second, starts 19th, and Rob Butler, who we just heard from, starts 18th on the grid. Now, last time at Alton Park, we did see the likes of Jack Smith and Jack McIntyre get onto the podium from the back of the top 20. Can they do it again? Of course, Smith starting quite a bit further up the order than the rest of them. He needs to capitalise then on a good grid position in race number 2, which gets underway now. A good start made from pole there by Eric Bolton. He's definitely going to have the lead as they race towards Abbey Corner for the first time. An uncontested lead, really, as everybody else squabbles for second behind him. 3 wide there with Zanatechi up the inside. Thorpe gets sideways, and Eric Bolton it is then that will scarper off into the distance with the advantage. Mick Sutton second. 2 and 3 wide behind into Village. 4 wide maybe there with Felvis up the middle. Surely they don't all avoid contact. Amazingly, Jack, I think they did.
Oh, don't say it too soon there, Andy, because Simon Thorpe hits the curb quite hard, and as they go 3 into 1, it wasn't going to work, was it? Martin Johnson ends up coming off a little bit worse, but you're right, Eric Bolton's done astonishingly well. So far, touch wood, none of the big protagonists from race 1 have ended up coming unstuck, but we have got a long way to go in this first lap, haven't we? Nearly half a lap, in fact, of this 1 minute lap is quite sensational, really. How much can go on in a small space of time? Rich Hayden we're focusing on in the top 10. Mick Sutton potentially being overtaken by... Sorry, no, he's overtaking Eric Bolton into the race lead. He outbrakes himself quite heavily, which allows Bolton to get back ahead, and Mick Sutton ends up not being able to... Oh, there's a little bit of connection issue there. A little bit of lag, and Mick Sutton, he didn't deserve that, even if he did outbrake himself.
Oh, what a shame. Well, that you got the driver's eye view then of how things like that can just go wrong sometimes. That was a bizarre moment, but unfortunately it's something that comes out worse because Bolton retained the lead out of all of that. Zanatachi is second. Lewis is third. Now, Jack Smith is back behind Felvus, look, down in 6th place overall. Nicky Taylor's off the road through the first corner as well, but Jack Smith didn't really get the start he would have hoped for. Taylor again gets elbowed out wide, this time by Isaac Smith in the all-white Cupra. To the outside, there's more contact. That's Brennan going around the outside. Smith runs wide into him, though. And all of a sudden, Jordan Brennan finds himself on the dirt going out onto the hangar straight. It shows here, doesn't it, how perilous it is to start from the back of these reverse grids.
Yeah, even if we are at a track like Silverstone, which is so wide, if you try to rejoin with everybody else, there's still going to be potential upsets, as Kenny Press is potentially upset right there, unfortunately. Isaac Smith and Nicky Taylor. Well, we know Nicky Taylor. We know what he's about. He tries to go around the outside. Unsurprisingly, Isaac Smith is starting to get a taste of what it's like to race in amongst the pack here at VRRC. And hopefully he's enjoying it, but I can imagine that he's getting a bit of a headache at the moment because Nicky Taylor's forced him out wide. Rob Butler looks to be going up the inside. Lewis Brown has gotten into this race lead ahead of Eric Bolton. Now, Lewis Brown, a quick driver, not the quickest Golf driver we've got here today, but compared to most of the drivers trying to chase him down, potentially, apart from Jack Smith, who has got himself into third, I think Lewis Brown could be potentially on for a really good podium position here. He just needs to get his head down and work with Jack Smith when he eventually catches him up.
Yeah, Lewis Brown, the 2017 Ginetta GT5 champion, but then went on to compete for several years in mini challenge racing successfully, so he knows his front-wheel drive too, and now he's out in front, needs to try and make a break before Jack Smith gets there onto his tail. Kenny Press is out of the race, we believe, then after that off down at Stowe a lap ago, so he becomes the first of the race's retirements. Dave Newsham on the tail of Rich Hayden. Further back, Nicky Taylor in the thick of the action as always. He's got Rob Butler ahead and Jordan Brennan behind, so Butler has climbed into 12th so far. Brennan 14th, and Jack Mack all the way down in 16th place. So of those 3 podium finishes in race 1, it's McIntyre who is making the least progress.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned in the interview, he has got the championship lead. Maybe I have weighed a little bit of pressure on him. But there is 16 minutes to go, so I very much doubt. I know we know Jack quite well. He's quite impervious to pressure, to be honest, as Newsham did well not to throw. Speaking of throwing off, Eric Axelsson off the backside, and Martin Johnson as well. No idea how it happened. We just saw them take stage exit left. And as we focus a little bit further forward, again, it's just a massive melee, isn't it? It looks like everybody's trying to rush to get the new iPhone or something back in 2008. It's absolute madness here, Andy.
I was far too cool to be doing that back in 2008, I can tell you. Not. Meanwhile, side by side, Nicky Taylor into Stoke Corner. He's got Jordan Brennan trying to go around the outside of him. There was another car there briefly, which then went off the road. That was Simon Thorpe. I don't quite know where Simon got to. There he is, bouncing over the grass.
I'm not sure Simon is either.
No, I was taking a very different version of Stoke Corner there to everybody else, but thankfully no major damage done. Jack Smith, I was about to mention, is into 2nd place, by the way. So Brown and Smith now, 2 gold class drivers, 1 and 2. 1 second between them. Now, Smith, so far today, has been a bit quicker than Lewis Brown, hasn't he? But can he catch and then pass Lewis for the race victory? He could do with it, couldn't he?
He could do with it. I think a big shout out to Eric Bolton as well. It's hard if you're a silver driver starting on pole position to absorb the pressure and stay where you are. Obviously, we gave props to Kenny Press, who unfortunately is DNF'd. Kenny did it last week. Eric seems to have done it this week, and he's got a quick silver driver behind him with Dave Buki as well. So it might not last forever, but Eric has done a really good job in the first 5 minutes of this race. So fair play to him. Hopefully he stays there and picks up some really good points. A little bit towards the front, that was Carl Felvers, I think, fending off the attack of Paul Zanatachi. Those two were actually pretty bitter rivals. I say bitter, they're pretty big rivals in the silver category back when Kyle was a silver class driver. Paul really showing him that although he's moved up a class, he's not going to give him any more room.
No, he's not, is he? Not letting him through without a fight here. Meanwhile, just ahead, Dave Buki has caught the silver class leader, Eric Bolton. Bolton leads the way, but there is Buki. Dave Buki, and again, came into this round joint championship leader with Zanatachi. Zanatachi outscored him by a couple of points in race 1, and now it's Buki's opportunity to do that back to him, but he's very wide through Abbey. He's slow off the corner. Kyle Felvers goes through, and now Zanatachi's there. I was going to say behind him. He's actually ahead of him. How on earth did he get the car stopped? He's not going to make the position, is he? No, he gets boxed in going through the link, but that was late on the brakes.
Yeah, I thought he managed to pull it off as well. It was absolutely madness from Zanatachi, wasn't it? But he didn't pull it off in the end. we'll see how he gets on as they go down towards Stowe. We're actually on board with Mick Sutton. A bit of a bonnet view for him. You can see Dave Buki defending on the left. Sorry, not defending at all. Zanatachi's defending. Buki is on the racing line. Zanatachi having to take that narrow entry. Mick Sutton taking that more conventional racing line means he does have a good exit. But to be fair to Zanatachi, he wasn't exactly held up there as he tries to attack around the outside yet again on Dave Buki. Buki forcing him off. He's a wily old driver, is Buki. He's not going to be phased into making any kind of mistakes by someone throwing it around the outside unexpectedly. But this is setting up a brilliant top 4 battle because Carl Felvers has got past Eric Bolton now. And Bolton, pretty much the cork in the bottle, I fear.
Jack
oh,
Smith,
well, I say that.
Oh, what was that all? Oh no, Buki! Buki's off. They're all off. That was Rich Hayden, I think, getting involved. And that might be Newsham, is it? No, Bolton's delayed in it all. Isaac Smith gets through. But somehow Dave Buki got spat out of the pack. Mick Sutton's off. This is a separate incident now with Zanatachi. So the 2 front runners in the Silver Championship, both off the road in 2 separate incidents, and that's quite a bit of damage, I think, to Zanatachi's car. What does all of this mean? Well, it means that Carroll gets the class lead, and Joel Lask is now second in the class, having non-finished earlier on. Robin Walters is off the road as well. What on earth went on then? There was an incident through Abbey which sort of carried on through Farm, and then another one up at Village which saw Zanatachi and Mick Sutton going off the road. The point I was about to make is that Jack Smith has caught the race leader Lewis Brown, but I don't know if we dare, Jack, take our eyes off this battle in the silver class.
Yeah, I was going to say, in the sort of, if we're looking at the wider picture as well from that crash, Jordan Brennan has got himself into 4th place. Jack McIntyre up to 6th, now fighting with Nicky Taylor. Those two know each other quite well now. They were fighting very, very hard Donington and Tuesday, so looking forward to seeing how that one sort of susses itself out, shall we say. Obviously, Isaac Smith. And it has meant that, Andy, basically all the golds, all the protagonists in gold, apart from, well, to be fair, Butler and Newsham, have gotten to the front of this order, and Jack Smith has got through on Lewis Brown at the front end. Lewis Brown has now been demoted into 2nd.
Yeah, that was on the cards for a few laps, and to be fair, they're so far ahead of everyone else that Smith could afford to wait a little bit there, wait for his opportunity. That being said, Brown's going to come back at him here, and with an absolute demon switchback, gets up the inside. There's a bit of a hip and shoulder on the apex, but Lewis Brown has just sent a very clear message to Jack Smith. He doesn't care whether Smith is up there fighting for the championship lead. He wants a race win, and Lewis Brown is not going to give this one away without a real fight. How he got the car stopped then, I don't know. I think he had to borrow some of Jack Smith's brakes as well to get the job done, but he did get the job done, and Brown is back in front.
Well, you know what they say in football, shoulder barging is legal, and that's essentially what Lewis Brown has just done, isn't it? I know we're not playing football, but it's a similar sort of scene that we were seeing as Jack Smith, sorry, I keep getting the Isaac and Jack mixed up. Jack gets a fantastic run, but here comes Lewis Brown yet again trying to hold on to the brakes for as long as possible and as late as possible. He couldn't manage to do it. It would have been some kind of miracle if he had managed to hold around the outside there. But Jack Smith now has this race lead. Lewis Brown, he made a good effort for a lap holding back onto it, but I think Jack Smith's going to flex his muscles a little bit as Carl Felvers is holding off Jordan Brennan just behind. We'll keep on board with Lewis Brown just to see if he tries to send back one up the inside, but I fear he's a little bit too far back for even Mr. Brown to go for.
Yes, I suspect so. I think Smith should now have the pace to get away. 3rd place then, Brennan, as you said, with Felvers behind him in 4th. Behind them, it's Nicky Taylor and Jack McIntyre. So McIntyre's 6th at the moment. There he is. The blue car heads down into Vale and Club, and could do with getting past Nicky here, really, and trying to set off after the top 4 runners. A podium is potentially still on the cards here for McIntyre, but he needs to make slightly better progress. It's been a very measured drive, this, from McIntyre, though. I've suggested a couple of times that he's not been making the progress he needs to, but he still has all 4 corners on his Cupra, doesn't he? And there is a lot to be said for that, given just how robust this race has been. So perhaps being a bit more circumspect, it hasn't gained him as many places as the likes of Brennan, for example, but he's stayed out of trouble. He's had no contact, and he's got a healthy car now going into the second half of the race.
Yeah, well, Dave Marshall, who tonight is running the server and basically running the event, normally, obviously, co-commentator of VRRC, but he's actually come on the Discord and said that Jack McIntyre's racing has been really good. It's been very action-packed. The problem with it is the fact that so is everybody else on the grid. He's going up the inside here, Nicky Taylor, and, well, I think that was weirdly easy from Nicky Taylor, I would say. He's not really held back at all. Normally, he's going for leather sort of thing. He's just going straight back up the inside of people. And Nicky actually here. Oh, here we go. Here's the cut back, but he slams the curb, and that pretty much ends that riposte.
Yeah, so now Isaac Smith and Rob Butler are on his tail. I've forgotten a bit about Rob Butler in this race. He lost out in the shenanigans up at Abbey Farm and Village when we had those multiple collisions a few laps ago. So he's on the recovery drive now in 8th place, just behind the man we ride on board with now, Isaac Smith, who, as you said, is this week, in fact, yesterday, I think it was, wasn't it, announced that he will be racing in TCR UK this year, shaping up to be a fantastic season of racing in that championship this season. Great to have Isaac on board. And here he is on board with him as he goes up the inside of Nicky Taylor. That's a hard place to make a pass. He had his nose in the gap, though, and Nicky Taylor just sort of turned in regardless.
Yeah, well, I suppose, as I mentioned before, that front-wheel drive, if you just get a tap of the rear end, just keep your foot pinned, and a lot of the time, physics will take care of it and sort of sort you out. But, yeah, a lot of front-wheel drivers take advantage, front-wheel drive drivers take advantage of that fact, don't they? And that's why you see a little bit more pushing and shoving. The car's just that touch more forgiving under contact. Obviously, there is a limit, and we have unfortunately seen that limit going through Abbey this afternoon. But still, there's enough there for Isaac Smith to be okay with the amount that he showed up the inside, and Nicky Taylor to be quite okay with just putting his foot down and trying to push on.
Yeah, well, they came out of it in the same order, I suppose, didn't they? So no
Yes,
harm,
exactly.
no foul. On board with Butler then, who now chases down those two. He's caught them a little bit as they had their skirmish going through that right hand. A very wide line there, and very, very late on the brakes from Butler. Blimey, the last time he braked that late, he ended up in the barriers at Coppice Corner, and that did not end well. This one, thankfully, ended with a slightly less significant bit of contact, but he does drop back a little way further than Isaac Smith. Jack McIntyre, meanwhile, is ahead of Kyle Felvis, I just spotted. You can see that in the foreground. But that was some committed braking there from Rob Butler. Misguided, perhaps, but at least he avoided major contact.
I thought, to be honest, I thought he was going through the wall and onto the national circuit and was going to run his own race. It was really far too late. Like you mentioned, he managed to aim at a gap and he managed to just squeeze and stay out through it. But very, very close to being quite a career, not career-ending, it's not that bad, but a race-ending crash, unfortunately. As I mentioned, Isaac Smith in 7th place. Jack Smith leading the way and pulling away as well. 1.6 second the gap between himself and Lewis Brown. I mentioned earlier, Lewis Brown, he just needs to try and get his head down, and once Jack Smith caught up, just work with him and try and keep that podium position. That's exactly what he's done. I'm very impressed, Andy, with Lewis Brown in this second race. He's done exactly what he needed to do. No big dramas, no big shenanigans. As I mentioned, head down and just go straight. Basically, that's all he needs to do.
Yeah, the question for me now is whether or not he can fend off Jordan Brennan, because Brennan is closing on him pretty rapidly, and they're going to be together, I think, before the end of the race. 5.5 minutes still to go. On board with Eric Axelson. That's Joel Lasker ahead of us. Now, Joel, at some point in this race, lost the silver class lead to Andy Carroll. I cannot remember whether I told you about that already, because so much has been going on within the silver class, but that is the order now. It's Carroll ahead of Lask, with Zanatachi third in class, and now Axelson is going to look to the inside. Can he get past Joel at Stowe Corner? Again, Joel is sort of fighting this one, and that's allowing Zanatachi and Martin Johnson to close in on both of them.
Yep, it looks like there's a little bit of rubbing though as Axelson and Lask, who's driven very well considering he's actually obviously not been so good. I think he DNF'd the first race. I was just trying to remember what his first race result was, but he did DNF it, didn't he? He's driving superbly here. And Axelson, again, that little bit of killer instinct, Andy, is slightly what we're lacking here with Eric. Rob Butler has got ahead of Isaac Smith, finally, probably in Rob Butler's eyes, as Axelson now looks to the outside. And again, a difficult move, really, to try and pull that one off. And when you've got drivers like Zanatachi and Johnson up behind you, here comes Zanatachi, in fact, it's just not going to cut it. Axelson needs to get just that, again, that killer instinct, forcing moves to try and just pull away. Jordan Brennan has got past Lewis Brown.
Wow. That was a lot quicker than I expected.
Yep.
So I wonder if maybe Lewis didn't make that too difficult for him, because I think Brennan was clearly the quicker of the two, and maybe a little bit of teamwork going on there. So Brennan goes into second. Jack McIntyre now, of course, is catching them. Another reason for them not to be fighting over that position, because they don't want McIntyre to get any closer. But yeah, back to Eric Axelson. Sometimes it's not just about going for the move every opportunity you get. You have to pick your moments, don't you? And I think what we're seeing from Eric there, certainly into Village on the last lap, just because he was close enough to go to the outside into Village didn't mean that was a good idea. He would have been better off, I think, just settling in line, getting a good exit onto the Hangar Straight, and then maybe that would have been his opportunity. But that's something drivers learn the more they race, isn't it, Jack? Just because you have a run on someone doesn't mean you're obliged to do something with it. There might be a better opportunity just around the corner.
No, and that's a big learning curve for a lot of people and a lot of drivers. I know a lot of my friends, they send me videos when they're playing on certain games, like the Formula 1 games on their PlayStation and stuff like that. Obviously very different to what we do now. And they're sending me videos saying, oh, I got hit off, it was blah-de-blah's fault. It's like, well, no, you shouldn't have been going for the move. It's like, but I'm faster. But no, you shouldn't have been going for the move because you were always going to get hit off in that situation. And that's sort of a similar situation as what we just saw then. My example is a bit more exaggerated, shall we say. But Eric, again, just decision-making and being that little bit extra cutthroat. But by the looks of it, Zanatachi and Lasker fighting it out so close that Axelson might actually get back those two places, even if it won't score many points.
Yeah, just wondering where Dave Bucke had gone to. Of course, he spun early on, didn't he? He's actually doing quite well to still be 5th in class, but some way behind that group. 5th place overall, meanwhile, is Kyle Felvers versus Nicky Taylor versus Rob Butler. So Butler has another couple of positions here that he could gain. He's got 2.25 minutes or so to go, and Rob Butler will be really miffed, I think, at the way this has gone. You can see the damage there to the passenger side window, which sort of tells its own story as to how his race has gone. But Rob Butler, who has had success in Civic Cup in the last couple of years, a very quick driver, no doubt about it, and now needs to try and find a way past the two that are squabbling ahead of him. Taylor to the inside of Felvers. This will delay both of them, and Butler's got the right idea, goes to the outside line. He's forced off the road, but buys himself a ticket to the inside line now, and he might even try and get both of them.
Yeah, I don't want to be too controversial, but is that potentially gaining an advantage while off the track? I don't know. I'll leave that one to the steward, shall we say. But regardless, the racing is absolutely excellent. So I think it's very entertaining. It's Nicky Taylor going on the outside. They're going to go 3 wide into Abbey. And have a look at Isaac Smith's point of view. Nicky Taylor goes out of it. Carl Felvers goes wide as he went too quick. Isaac Smith's come and joined the party. There's a tap at the backside by Nicky Taylor, shall we? And here comes Isaac Smith. Flying up the inside really late on the brakes, and he might have all 3 of them. And no, there's been turned around. Rob Butler's been turned around, and I think Isaac Smith's just been turned around.
There are 2 pedals in these cars. There's an accelerator and a brake, and I think some of these drivers are forgetting that because all of that was quite avoidable, quite frankly. Rob Butler drops down to 10th position, and Isaac Smith, he was sideways, but saved it, I think. Drops to 8th now, though, behind Dave Newsham, who I haven't seen all race. And suddenly, the wily old fox is right up there into 7th place, and if he completes this move at Stowe, he's got another lap left to try and get another couple places. Taylor and Felvers just ahead. Isaac Smith is way off the road. Andy Carroll doesn't really want to be a part of this because at the moment he's got the silver class in the bag. The last thing he needs is to get nerfed off by one of these gold class drivers who are all, I think, Jack, getting a little bit hot under the collar.
Yeah, Carroll's in that sort of awkward situation. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, aren't you? Because he doesn't want to come off the throttle and lose out on time to, say, Zanatachi, who's obviously a very strong championship contender. Carroll, he wants 2 race victories. That is what he's on for. And we have to talk about driver of the day, Andy, because it's something that we quite often forget because the action is so full on constantly. Driver of the day is sometimes one of those filler conversations, isn't it, when there's nothing really happening. Unfortunately, there's been I say unfortunately, there has been a lot happening, so we haven't discussed it. In my opinion, just putting it out there, I think Andy Carroll has got to be up there. I think Jordan Brennan, for sure, has got to be up there as well, with a 1st place and a 2nd coming from the back of the field. So they're my 2 cents, shall we say. We're just having a look at Jack Smith there, who's about to take the checkered flag.
Yes, he is. Out of club corner we come then. So Jack Smith is going to take his 2nd race victory of the season, a much-needed one as well after the disappointment of race 1. Across the line he goes. Jordan Brennan 2nd, definitely a candidate for that driver of the day. We'll get to that in a second. He's pretty happy, I think, with that drive. Lewis Brown 3rd, McIntyre 4th, Kyle Felvers, I think, will just come home 5th, and Dave Newsham's in the wall. Oh, and he didn't get to the line yet either. He got tagged by Isaac Smith, I think. and ends up headbutting the wall. That was a really unfortunate end to his race, and he'll drop another couple of places by the end as well. Isaac Smith gets 7th, then Andy Carroll in 8th position, with Rob Butler 9th, Paul Zanatachi 10th and 2nd in class, ahead of Dave Newsham 11th, but that's not what he deserved really. Joel Lask with a solid drive there to 12th place overall, 3rd in the silver category, ahead of Eric Axelson, Martin Johnson, Dave Bukey, Eric Bolton, Simon Thorpe, and that, I think, is your lot. Well, a dramatic end to a dramatic race there, really, certainly for Dave Newsham. I was about to say that whilst Jordan Brennan is the obvious choice here for driver of the day, I do think Andy Carroll maybe, because not only has he taken 2 silver class wins, but we have seen in both races how frenetic the midfield battle was. He not only survived those midfield battles, but actually came home with 2 race victories. So I think, Jack, that's where my vote goes.
Yeah, I know I would tend to agree with you. I've sort of talked myself into Andy Carroll myself as well, because although Brennan got the best sort of results on paper, you could argue, in terms of the overall results, the fact he went from right at the back of the field and pushed his way up to 2nd place in that second one as well. But Andy Carroll, he's taken 40 minutes tonight of non-stop pressure, non-stop moves, whereas Jordan Brennan sort of drove on his own in the first race, although very quickly and very impressively. So, yeah, my opinion, it's going to go to Andy Carroll as well. I would agree with you there, Andy.
Excellent stuff. Well, we certainly agree on more things than the drivers were agreeing on out on track, I think, in that race. It was pretty frenetic stuff, but it was a race that was won by Jack Smith. Jack, good to have you back at the front. We'll talk about that race in a moment, but I just want to first of all touch upon race 1, which did not go to plan, did it?
No, yeah, that was an experience for sure. Yeah, just got taken out really into the hairpin on the second lap. I think a bit of a bold move by one of the drivers just sent me off, and then from there on just got swallowed up. So yeah, it is what it is. But happy to have recovered some points in race 2. So yeah. Yeah,
well, that's on to more positive things then. Out of the negative of the bad race 1 result, that gave you a better grid position for race 2, but you still had a fight on your hands. Lewis wasn't letting you have that win without a fight, was he?
Yeah, no, it was a good battle from Lewis actually. It was he went for some moves I didn't think he was going to go for, and he actually went for them. So that was some proper racing there, and I really like that. So yeah, but we still got the points in the end and came home for the win anyway. So yeah, I'm happy with that.
Yeah, that will, of course, help keep you in contention for the championship standings as well. On to the next round now then, and Silverstone has provided some good racing, but another new challenge for you next week. How are you looking forward to that one?
Yeah, Brand's actually such a good track, so yeah, looking forward to it. It's going to be an interesting one for sure. It's a lot more technical than Silverstone International, so yeah, really separate the men from the boys.
Excellent stuff. Well, congratulations. You've certainly been entertaining to watch in both races tonight. Congratulations on your 2nd win of the year.
Cool. Cheers, guys.
So Jack Smith then the race winner, and Jack Oliphant has got the man who chased him home.
Yeah, Jordan Brennan, congratulations. Obviously, we spoke to you a little earlier, but congrats on a 2nd place in race 2. If anything, probably slightly more impressive, really, to keep it as clean as you did. Take advantage of some people falling over each other, shall we say. Bring home a strong 2nd place.
Yeah, it was a good race, that. Everyone just sort of seemed to fall off in front of me, so it kind of went how I wanted it to. There's a few unsafe rejoins which were a bit sketchy at the time, but we got past them and yeah, came home with 2nd. Big thanks to Lewis for for not making that hard.
I was going to say, we were speculating that you would catch Lewis by the end of the race, and all of a sudden we look back at you half a lap later and you're overtaking him. Was there a little bit of communication, shall we say, or was it sort of just a case of maybe Lewis just made a mistake and you just took advantage?
No, there's no communication, but Lewis just let us through.
Fair play. I can't argue with that. Having a look at the championship as well, it's about as close as it was in qualifying, to be honest. Jack Smith on 45 points. We won't spoil the entire championship grid, don't worry, we'll bring that up in a second. But you're on 44. It is mad close. Jack McIntyre on 42 as well. So it's very, very close between the 3 of you. Were you sort of expecting that? Does that put more pressure as you go towards Brands Hatch? How's that play in your head this early on in the season?
Well, to be honest, I thought I wanted to be a little bit higher up coming out of Brands. It's just like race 2 didn't go so well, so I'm kind of glad that it's closed up a bit. It is a shame that Jack had the bad race one, but I'm glad it's closed it back up for me.
Well, it makes it very entertaining for us as well. Jordan Brennan, congratulations on the second place and obviously that race victory in race one as well. We look forward to probably speaking to you at Brands Hatch.
Cheers, thank you.
Awesome stuff. Well, Jordan Brennan, second place, and we heard him referencing there that Lewis Brown, who finished third in that race, didn't make life too difficult for him. But Lewis, the same can't be said for Jack Smith. You definitely made life hard for him. That was a brilliant battle to watch. Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, definitely. It was. I knew he was quicker than me. It was 2 corners where he was a lot quicker. So yeah, I knew when he got past the first time, it was I can't make this easy for him. And then the second move, I was just his car was moving back and forth a little bit, so I didn't know how to judge it. But as soon as the gap was there, I just know how to go for it, because if I didn't, he was just going to drive away either way.
That's the sort of rough and tumble racing you're well used to, of course, because we've seen you racing in one-make categories, both front and rear-wheel drive in the past. So is there anything that you've learnt from your real-world racing that you can apply to this, maybe, if not from a driving perspective, maybe a racecraft one?
You can't back out of a move, because one little mistake can drop you straight back into the pack. So yeah, it was I was just fully committed, and yeah, to be honest, I was just trying to hold him back to let Jordan maybe try and catch, but yeah, it was a good race.
On to Brands Hatch now, the Grand Prix circuit, always a driver's favourite, it seems. Are you another member of the Brands Hatch Grand Prix fan club?
Yeah, definitely. So I obviously got the double win in the real life mini challenge end of last year. So yeah, it's one of my favourite tracks. Just Silverstone, just this layout, I've not raced it before, either on sim or in real life. So this week I've just been trying to learn it. So yeah, it was just the pace was we were just struggling big time all week. So to be able to come away with a P3 today, I was happy.
Awesome. Well, Lewis, great to have you in the championship. Best of luck for the rest of the season. We'll see you again next week.
Cheers, thank you.
So that was Lewis Brown, and I'm hoping that we will have a chance now to chat to our silver class winner, Jack, because we didn't get a chance to speak to Andy Carroll after race one, but lucky for us, he made life easy for us and went and won race two as well.
Yeah, he did, and of course, driver of the day. So Lewis, are you with us? Sorry, Andy.
No,
Andy, my bad. I don't know where I got Lewis from then. Andy, well, nice to hear from you anyway. But a big congratulations, 2 race victories, driver of the day as well. I mentioned it right at the end when we were sort of deliberating driver of the day. That looked like 40 minutes of non-stop pressure.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. That was, I'm going to need a shower now, I think. That was really, especially that second race, trying to sort of manage letting some of the gold class guys pass while still trying to chase down the guys in silver that are ahead of me. And then I think one of the benefits of this track is, you've got a lot more room when things go wrong in front of you. You've got a lot more room to react and to avoid things than we did at Alton Park. So, yeah, managed to stay out of trouble for both races, and was quite relieved at the end there when, I was managed the last couple of laps, caught back up with about 5 of the gold guys who were all battling, and was praying that they didn't take me out or anything at that point. But it was hard work, but yeah, really, really enjoyable, really good fun, and yeah, very pleased with that.
It's sort of one of the things you touched on then about the gold drivers leads me on to one of the questions that we are always sort of speculating on, really, me and Andy, is the fact that when you sort of catch up to those drivers, or when you're sort of battling around them, do you treat it differently? Do you know that they're gold drivers, and when you're sort of putting moves on, does that come into the equation at all?
For me, it did. Certainly in that second race. Once I saw there were just a couple of silver guys ahead, I was just kind of trying to let the quicker gold guys pass as easily as possible down the back end of the straight. Just braking a bit earlier and letting them through, just so I could kind of keep pace and keep my pace up and catch the other silver guys. And yeah, as I say, I'm not going to get any more points for battling heavily with the gold guys. It's just going to slow us all down, and let some of the other silver guys back in the race. So yeah, that was definitely a something I was aware of and something I was sort of using to try and let the guys past.
Well, at the end of the day, it couldn't have gone much better for you today, because not only did you pick up the most amount of points, you've also picked up the championship lead as well. We will,
Really?
we'll reveal the silver championship and the gold championship right after we've concluded this interview. But a big well done, Andy, and you'll also be getting your hands on an AOC gaming keyboard as well for your troubles. So congratulations on tonight.
Thanks, Jack.
And that was Andy Carroll, Andy McEwen, and we can actually have a look through the championship standings now.
It does seem that you have to be either called Andy or Jack to be involved in this championship, doesn't it?
Very annoying, isn't it?
and one rogue Lewis in there just to confuse us all. Yes, championship standings then. This is how things look, and well, as Jack said, it's pretty close. In fact, it's a lot closer than it was when we arrived at Silverstone. Jack Smith may have had a disappointing start to the night, but that win in race 2 means that he holds on to the championship lead that he held coming into the 2 races by just 1 point, though, over Jordan Brennan in second, and Jordan just 2 points ahead of Jack McIntyre. So those three, just 3 points separating them, and they are now starting to separate themselves from everybody else, because Dave Newsham, look, is 19 points further back in 4th position. Then it gets quite tight again, though. He's got a 3-point advantage over Rob Butler, who's 4 ahead of Lewis Brown, who's 1 ahead of Eric Axelson and Nicky Taylor, with Jack Keithley not here this weekend, unfortunately, and Isaac Smith rounding out the top 10. In the silver category, meanwhile, Andy Carroll, again, as Jack quite rightly said, has the points lead, and whilst the gold championship has tightened up, in silver, we may have a new name at the top, but it is a more comfortable championship advantage for Carroll. He's 4 points clear now of Zanatachi, who had an okay night, but did get involved in a couple of incidents. Martin Johnson for Distinction Motorsport, 3rd place, look, just a point further back, and then 3 points further back is Dave Buki in 4th place, the Kinetic Motorsports driver. And then again, a bit like in the gold class, the top 3 or 4 drivers are distancing themselves slightly from the rest. Kenny Press there in 5th, Eric Bolton 6th, Mick Sutton 7th ahead of Joel Lask and Simon Thorpe. It is early days though, we've still got 4 weeks of racing to go, Jack, so anything can happen. Although we're starting maybe to get a picture of who the championship contenders are going to be in both classes, I still wouldn't like to pick a winner just yet.
No, you wouldn't put any kind of money on it. You wouldn't put your house on it, that's for sure. But what we can say is, what you would put your money on, is the fact that it's going to be a pretty exciting 4 weeks to follow this one, isn't it? A lot of people have touched on the fact that we're going to Brands Hatch next week, a track that sort of reeks back to Alton Park. It's again a switch of style, a switch of track. It's very unforgiving. You won't see 3 wide, or if you do, it won't come out the corner 3 wide. Put it that way at Brands Hatch. Thruxton, again, I've seen a lot of drivers at VRRC. Thruxton, we've driven it a lot. It's one of those tracks that isn't very much used in other championships, and other championship organisers don't tend to use it. We use it a lot, so those drivers who are involved with VRRC might have a slight advantage there. And obviously real-world drivers who have driven it will know exactly what it's about. It's very scary. Donington Park and Snetterton are pretty much used on every single service. The drivers will know like the back of their hand. And a bit like Silverstone, I think those 2 tracks will really open up to be some fantastic racing, very close on times as well. So can't wait to see how it concludes.
Yeah, definitely. It's going to be a fantastic season, isn't it? Every track that we go to, I think, has the potential to generate good racing. And given how evenly matched everyone's been so far, I think we can guarantee there is going to be action aplenty. The next round then in 1 week's time, same place here at Brands Hatch. And Jack, that's not it, is it? There's plenty more racing coming up here on VRRC. There is what we were just chatting about, Brands Hatch, the venue for the 3rd event in the championship. But plenty more good racing coming up here in the near future.
Yeah, absolutely. This is the bit where I probably need to write it down as a massive script, isn't it? But you're absolutely right. Yeah, on your screen there, round 3 for the TCT. And of course, round 3, the official round 3, Brands Hatch of the MX5 Cup as well. This is the 4th week we're running it. We've done Donington twice, a bit of a rerun, and it's just been awesome as well. So if you're free on Tuesdays, and if you haven't been tuning into it, then I strongly suggest you do, because it's basically like the TCT we've just watched, but in little MX5s. It's just as chaotic, it's just as frantic, and it's just as close, and it's absolute awesome fun as well. So if you're stuck with something to do on a Tuesday night, then please do come down and give us a watch on then as well. A lot of the drivers you've seen tonight are actually involved, i.e. Jack Smith, you can actually see in the SmartFi car on your thumbnail there. And last but not least, a rundown of what else VRRC has got to offer Of course, we've been driving Assetto Corsa here, so in the bottom right of your screen, Assetto Corsa Championships. We also do time attacks that run throughout the month, and we do fun races every single Sunday as well in random cars on random tracks. Assetto Corsa Competizione, we do weekly endurance races on Dirt Rally. There is a weekly stage and rally cross. But one of the brilliant things is the fact that on Dirt Rally, you can just sign up to the server. You can put your time in on whatever day you like. It's not set, okay, you have to turn up at Thursday at 7:30. You just log on when you have the time and put your best lap time in, then a leaderboard gets created every single week. And in Forza 5, if you're a bit more of a chilled racer, you don't have a PC, for instance, you only have an Xbox, and you just want to sort of get involved in a fun community, well, Forza Horizon 5 is where we like to do that on VRRC. They do club cruises, events, and just basically social stages, or even if you just want to chat on Discord about some of the cool cars you've been getting or some of the cool mods you want to show them off, that sort of thing. So for any of that, if that interests any of you guys, then the Discord link is attached down at the bottom underneath the YouTube, well, where you're watching this, basically, in the YouTube description. So please do check it out.
Yeah, some brilliant stuff there, and something for everyone, as you said, the more casual gamers and proper hardcore sim racing as well. Well, we've seen some hardcore racing here tonight at Silverstone, haven't we? I mean, to sum it up, Jack, it is almost impossible, really, but very, very close racing, and I expect that to continue next week at Brands Hatch. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here tonight. Hope you've enjoyed the show. We've certainly enjoyed making it for you. I've been Andy McEwen, Jack Oliphant here, as ever, alongside me, and a big thanks to Tom O'Farrell, who needs to start growing extra arms, I think, to be able to manage all of the different camera angles that we need to bring you the action in this championship. But thank you to him, thank you to everyone that helps put these broadcasts and this series together. We'll all be back again here in a week's time for the third round of the championship. Until then, though, it's goodbye from us.
Woo!